Well, take your Bibles, if you would, please, and open to the book of 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians, chapter number 12. 1 Corinthians, chapter number 12. Oftentimes, the way that the Lord works is and probably you learn this a little bit as we mature just a little bit, that oftentimes there is any task that is needing to be done, oftentimes may require some specialty to it. In other words, I could think of a number of things that we have to do sometimes that require not only just a special tool, but sometimes just the ability to be able to use. As simple as it seems, it works. I can remember one thing that we were having an issue with drainage and just some blockage and things of that nature with the old building and the septic that was there. And we were working and trying to get things straightened up so that everything would operate as it should. And at the time, Brother Andrew brought over just a little device. We put it on the end of the hose. It expanded and then created pressure on the backside and was able to clear out the pipes. And it's like, look at that. How easy was that? And we're fussing and everything else. And just the right tool for the job took care of the need immediately. There's been many times that when you're working on a project, and it requires a tool that just is fit for that job and useful for that job. You know, it's interesting because God says in His economy, He also has special tools that do a specific work. And in that, they're made for the task to accomplish the work that He has in mind. They're put together for that and fashioned for that. And in that instance, God oftentimes, in the process of a church, begins to send them the tools that is necessary to accomplish a task. He says that particular environment may need this particular tool to take care of the job that is there, and somehow He sends that tool to accomplish that task. And in that instance, so God is looking for a toolbox to fill. We call it a church. God says it's a toolbox to accomplish the work by His hand. And it's interesting to see because oftentimes we look at the things that are here, and the other day we were working on something, and it seemed like I had multiple tools in multiple different places and in multiple different either carrying cases or toolboxes and things like that. And I can remember telling Brother Starr and Brother Trenton Starr, Brother Starr's dad, the other Trenton Starr, that in that instance, he had gotten a new toolbox for Christmas, and it was on wheels. And I'm thinking, you know what? I'm interested in that now. This thing of lugging things around all the time. And because we were needing electrical tools, and then we were needing just cutting tools, and just a host of different things. And God comes in the process of building a church. And He looks at it and says, these are tools that can be useful in the Master's hand. And so what He does then is He sends that particular work, that particular project, that particular place, the tool that is needed. Sometimes He grows it and gives a person the capabilities to accomplish a task. Sometimes He brings it in. But I think it's interesting because you and I are useful tools for the Master. We sometimes wonder, well, God, I can't do what they do. Don't worry about it. You're not supposed to. You know, the worst thing in the world is trying to do something with a tool that doesn't really fit that job. Now, you might be able to change a tire with a pair of slip joint pliers. You might, but you don't want to have to. And so in that instance, the tool for the job sure does make the work a whole lot easier, smoother, safer, and doesn't take as much time, doesn't take as much frustration, and it's easily done. And the work of God is this. Our task is to say, God, there's a job that needs to be done. There's some work that needs to be done. You know, the thing about a toolbox is this. It's wonderful to have, and it's wonderful to have the tools that are in there, but the reason those tools are there is because there's some work that may need to be done. I know that sometimes we say, well, I don't want to have to do that. I know. I understand. But when it has to be done, boy, it's nice to go over and walk over and pick up the tool that you need that makes the job a whole lot easier and operate a whole lot smoother. So in that instance, I want you to notice, if you would please, 1 Corinthians chapter number 12, beginning in verse number 8. The Bible says, "For to one is given," I like that word because it's God that does the giving. Because in that instance, he goes on to say, verse number 8, "For to one is given by the Spirit the word of wisdom, to another the word of knowledge by the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another gift of healings by the same Spirit, to another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another discerning of spirits, to another divers kinds of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues. But all these worketh that one, and the selfsame Spirit, dividing to every man severally as he will. For as the body is one, and hath many members, and all the members of that one body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit we are all baptized into one body, whether we be Jews or Gentiles, whether we be bond or free, and have been all made to drink into one Spirit. For the body is not one member, but many. If the foot shall say, because I am not the hand, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? And if the ear shall say," could you imagine your ear talking? "Because I am not the eye, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? If the whole body were an eye, where were the hearing? If the whole body were hearing, where were the smelling? But now God hath set the members, every one of them, in the body, as it hath pleased him." Useful tools. God has come to you and I, and he has said, "I have given you certain specific ideas, talents, likes, and abilities that fit into the work of God." And because I know that sometimes we get maybe frustrated, it's like, why can't this be done like this? Well, it could be you're the one that's fit for doing that particular project and job, and God is making it clear to you that this is something that you should do in some manner or another. You say, "I know, but that's somebody else's job." You know, let me put it like this. There is not a union in God's economy. There is not. Every job is open and available for every single person to do. You say, "Well, I'm going to tell somebody about it." Well, that's fine. You can tell somebody. Or you can say, "You know what, Lord, I'll tell you what. I'll find out how it's done, and I'll take care of it." You know, many times God opens a door for us to do what needs to be done simply because he has fit us to do those things. And it's interesting because there are some folks that God gives many abilities to. I'm jealous of them to some degree. They can do a lot. And the task at doing them, it seems like it comes easy and natural and things of that nature. But I realize, you know what? Of whom much is given, much is required. So, Lord, I'll keep my little one talent, and I'll keep it busy, and I'll work it. But in that instance, God sometimes comes and says, "Do you have this ability?" Well, yes. Okay, then do it and use it and make it available for me. And in that instance, God comes to you and I and says, "I have created you to do a task." I know it's like, well, I'd like for somebody else to do it too. God has, in many occasions, given us the opportunity to help teach and train and equip others to do a task that maybe we at some day may not be able to do. But in that instance, he comes and says, until that day comes, you know, there needs to be a tradesman mentality sometimes. In that instance, it says this. I don't know, growing up, I don't know if it was just something that, honestly, I've tried to evaluate a little bit, and I don't know for sure if it has an element of pride involved with that or what. But sometimes I see something that is being done, and this is what in my mind I say, I could do that. And on the other side, it's like, I think I can do it better. Now, I may not be able to, but at the same token, I look at it and it's like, I think I can do that. I think I'd like to try that. Now, there's some things, look, the folks that are in the medical field and things of that nature, I am glad they're there. I want no part of that whatsoever. The other day I had to go and they had to poke me in the arm, and I went in there and, the lady, her name's Creola, and she's friends with Miss Cheryl. So even this morning I told Miss Cheryl, I said, I had to go see your friend. And I said, she had to poke me in the arm. And so, but I went in there like a big boy. and I sat down in that little chair. And to me, it feels like the electric chair because it's like, I know something's going to happen bad. And I think I ask everybody every single time. I may have asked Robert the other day when he was getting poked in the hospital. It's like, did you watch? Now, Brother Ted says, oh, yeah, I watch. It's not me. I don't watch. I don't even want to. As a matter of fact, when I was up there visiting with him, the nurse came in there and she started to do things. And I said, are you going to start poking him? And she's, no, just got to change things here. It's like, okay, because I can't stay in here if you're going to do that. And because it's not going to happen. They'd had to be wheeling me out. You know, Robert's in there. How do you like that? Pastor passed out right up here. And they drug him out in the hallway and fanned on him a little bit and until he could revive. But I'm glad for those folks that can do it because I know I certainly could not. And as I went in there the other day and sat down and I asked her, I said, which arm? It is funny. When she does it, usually it goes pretty well. But one day she missed on this arm. I'm already breaking out in a cold sweat. So she's trying to talk to me about things, and I'm thinking, look, you're not distracting me. I am full well of tuned into what you're doing right now. And so she goes, you all right? And I said, I think so. She goes, I said, look, I'm here. I don't want to come back. Let's try on this arm. I was such a big boy. I'm telling you the truth. I swore I was going to get a sucker that day, but I didn't. And so I said, like I said, she missed in this arm, then she got over here. And so, but this time I sat down and she was chatting there just for a second. And then, you're always waiting for it. It's not terribly painful. Believe me, I've been hurt a whole lot worse. It's that little stick that's there and you're waiting for it. It's like, oh no. Because it's like, she's taking the life right out of me. She's draining it out of my arm, and I'm willingly sitting here. But, and she said, and she even told me, because I told her, I said, you were on your game today because it happened quick and fast, and she was done, and I was grateful. And I said, you're really on your game today. She goes, well, I'm glad for that. She goes, I'm glad it went well. I know you don't like it. It's a shame when you get a reputation already about things like that. But in this instance, God knows what you're put together for. And God knows what it's easy for you to do and how it comes easy along those lines. Let me give you just a couple things if I could. In the process of Paul telling the church here, he says, look, God sends things so that the task can be accomplished. God sends things so that things will go easier. And he begins to describe them. He says, so don't get frustrated when you can't do something else that needs to be done. You may not be equipped or prepared, or God may not design you to do that. But number one, all of God's children are tools. All of God's children are tools. That means that you have a useful purpose. You are used to accomplish something that can only be done by you. All you have to do is surrender to the master's hand so that you can do the task that is needing to be done. I know that sometimes we look at it and say, well, somebody else could do it so much better. They might be able to, but God has given you the task of doing it, and all you need to do is surrender to His will, and you'll find out that everything goes smoothly, and you're able to accomplish the work that needs to be done for the Lord's sake. In that instance, because we are all tools, don't get upset because you can't operate like somebody else does. I listen to Brother Randy sing, and I get a little jealous at times because he can hit the notes well. And then if we're singing or something like that, and I'm trying to sing a part, if it comes natural to someone and they can sing it well and easy, I'm thinking, oh, Lord, why can't I do that? He says, because I didn't design you to do that. That's why. And but I still try, and it's a mess. And in that instance, my mother she'd sing at the sink oftentimes, and she would oftentimes say, oh, I can't sing, but she liked to. She says, I sound like a foghorn. I said, well, sometimes ships got to get through the fog too, Mom. And so, but in that instance, it's just a reminder that God designs things the way He wants them designed to accomplish the task that He needs them. Since we're all tools, our job is to do this. Realize the job that we do often is the task that seems to come easy for us. See, I know, but it takes effort, and sure it does. That's the reason why you need a tool, because a job needs to be done, and you have to put forth effort to make it work. Now, I know that sometimes the tools that are there, we want the job to become seamless, easy, and the easiest way to do that is let somebody else do it. But God sometimes says, I don't want somebody else to do it. I want you to do it. He locked a couple Baptist preachers in the jailhouse one night. And as they were there in the jail, God showed up and said, somebody needs to hear a song here in the jail. And the Apostle Paul was there at the time, and Silas. They were locked together there in the jail. And God says, well, I guess he looked for George Shaw and said, well, I can't find him. And so I guess we got to use what we have. He says, now I've given the Apostle Paul the ability to be able to do a number of things. Singing may not be it. And it was so bad, it shook the whole earth till finally God said, look, I can't take that anymore. You got to stop things. But in that instance, the Apostle Paul was there. He reached over and he woke up Silas. He said, God just told me we need to be singing. He says, we're not singers. He says, I understand. We're more preachers and evangelists and things of that nature, but God needs us to sing right now. And he's given us the opportunity and the ability, so let's do it. And they accomplished a task that needed to be done. As they began to sing, pretty soon the walls in that prison house began to shake, and pretty soon the doors came open. And as the guard and the soldier that day began to fall upon his sword because he knew that if they escaped, it was going to be his life. He'd rather have taken his life than to give it up to somebody and in that manner. So in the instance, the Apostle Paul called out and said, don't harm yourself, we're here. The man came in and said, what must I do to be saved? In that instance, sometimes God uses the tool to accomplish a task. That man and his family needed to be saved. They needed to understand the saving gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. And so God had to come to Paul and say, I need you to sing. Paul sang and accomplished the task. In that instance, could he have used an angelic choir? Sure, he could have. But that's not what he uses. He uses Christians that understand redemption. He uses Christians that understand the work that is put forth. And when you begin to evaluate it, you begin to look and say, there was work and effort that went into my salvation. There was somebody that had to give up their Sunday so that they could teach my Sunday school class. There is somebody that had to be willing to put their tithe in the offering to make sure the light stayed on so I would have light to see the scriptures when I was whatever the case may be, somebody had to give up a little bit of some of their own time, their effort to be the tool in the master's hand to reach and work to fix you and I. And in that instance, keep in mind, all of God's children are tools too. God has different jobs for different tools. God has different jobs for different tools. Look, if you would, please, when we come to verse number 14. For the body is not one member, but many. And he reminds us of this as he goes on in verse number 15 and says, if the foot shall say, because I am not the hand, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? He is reminding us, don't be upset when you can't do what others do. Growing up, it was kind of interesting because if somebody did something, we all wanted to try it. And when I was in 6th grade, the thing to do was to walk on your hands. We did it everywhere. And I can still remember the little fella that started doing it the first time. And the rest of us decided, you know what, we can do that. And for that entire year, we're going down the hallway walking on our hands. We're in gym class walking on our hands. We're doing all kinds of things. The other day I thought, you know what? Don't get ahead of me. I said, I think I can. I wonder if I can still balance like that. And so I started to turn upside down, and all of a sudden, gravity began to pull so hard. It was amazing. Once I picked myself back up, I said, Lord, thank you for my feet. They don't ever give me the same headache that my hands just did. But you see, even though at one point it seemed easy, through these years and things of that nature, my feet have carried me miles. But my hands have done a different job altogether. So I have to realize that, yes, could one do something? Yes, but it wasn't really designed for that. So, yes, it can do that. Yes, it can accomplish that task. But the truth is, God has different jobs for different tools. And in that manner, you begin to consider God designed things for the purpose that he had in mind, and he designed you for the purpose he had in mind also. I know you may think, well, I'm not good at anything. That's not true. You are designed by God to accomplish a task. You may not be able to see it easily, but just surrender yourself to the Lord's will, and you'll find out that things can be done easily, and you'll find out that, wow, look at this, God used me. In that instance, because God has different jobs for different tools, he oftentimes will use it accordingly. Number 3, one tool cannot do every job. One tool cannot do every job. So that means there's assistance that has to be done to make this church operate. To make this operate right here as God wants it to do, I certainly can't do everything. There's a host of things that I'm supposed to do, and I'm happy to do them. There's a host of things that Brother Starr's supposed to do, and he's happy to do them. Brother Caleb has the tasks that he has to do, and he's happy to do them. But there comes a point where it's like, well, we'll let that crew do all of it. It's like, no, we don't. Look, I'm happy to do it, but at the same token, I'm happy to receive the blessings from it. But in that instance, it's like sometimes I call to get help just so you could be a blessing too. You say, I know, but it's usually at the most inopportune time, Pastor. I have called Brother Stan at the worst times in the entire world to come and help me out. And it's never something, it's usually something not just, hey, would you want to come and need biscuits and gravy? Usually that's not it. Usually it's, can you bring a chain? Can you bring your truck? Can you help with this? Can you? And usually that's the case. And if he is able, and if he's available to do that, he says, sure, I'll come and help you. And because there comes a point where this tool can't do the job that needs to be done, and I've got to get a bigger hammer to accomplish the task. And so God has to reach down into his toolbox and get the tool that's going to accomplish the task. Sometimes we look at it and we say, well, I'd like to do that. I'd like to do that. God allows you to do some other things. And I watched the other day, and a whole group of fellas, they were playing a song, and they were using tools to do it. One fella had a hammer, and he was hitting on an anvil, just ding, ding, and the ring from that was the exact tune. Another fella had a jug. He was blowing on it. Another one had a saw and bent it, and pretty soon they began to play together, and they were making an incredible music. And I'm thinking, but that's not what that's for. But it was that day. That's not necessarily how it's done. Look, every last one of you are going to go home tonight, and you're going to get 2 spoons, and you're going to look to the left and look to the right and go, tiddy-dee, 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 tiddy-dee. Just say, look, I can still do that. You know, sometimes the tools, look, the tool for the job. Yesterday, Cherith, early in the morning, she said, would you guys come with me to this particular restaurant? Now, she likes the Chinese and the Asian food and things of that nature, and I like it. But once in a while, you have to be a little bit cautious. Because the ironic thing is, we were sitting there in that Asian restaurant, and Garrett was frying up some of the meat on the little thing that was right there, and we were eating different things. And sitting over here, Mrs. Whitworth was looking at she goes, well, look at these salt and pepper shakers. It was little cats. And I said, isn't that ironic? And they kind of look at me like, what? I said, we're in an Asian restaurant. And oh. But in that instance, I just thought it was ironic anyway. Don't you guys find humor in things once in a while? But in that instance, we were sitting there eating, and they brought out the food and things like this, and they brought out the napkin, and inside that napkin there was 2 little sticks. And I look at the bowl of rice here, and I'm looking at the other things here, and I've got 2 sticks to try to eat it with. I'm thinking, this is not the tool for the job. And of course, they told me, well, if you need a fork, they'll bring one out to you. And I'm thinking, nope, I'm going to muster through this thing. And how many can work chopsticks well? Not me. I'm sitting there fussing. I have to keep adjusting them and getting them right. And I felt like I was just like this constantly. And I imagine, I made fun of their little cat things. I imagine they were back there saying, oh, look at those crazy white people trying to eat with chopsticks. And so, but I managed to wrestle through that. But the tool for the job. To accomplish a task, God oftentimes, one tool cannot do every job. It just cannot. And sometimes you need another tool to help to take care of things. Don't be upset when God asks you to do something outside what you may feel comfortable. It's a fact that God is going to use you to accomplish things. And then lastly, God has a time and place for every tool. God has a time and place for every tool. You say, well, I haven't been used a great deal. I've got tools in my toolbox that I haven't used in a while. But in that instance, when I need it, it's there. It is still within the toolbox that I have. I'm still grateful that I have it. I'm not thinking I want to get rid of that. I'm thinking, I'm grateful that it's here. I'm glad that it's here. And in that instance, when it comes time to use it, I can reach for it, put it to the task, and accomplish what needs to be done. Don't think for a second just because I'm not as busy as this tool over here. Don't be concerned. You're still in the toolbox. God still has you for a purpose. And if that need arises, he knows exactly where to go. And in that instance, he reminds us that sometimes that tool is placed there because it is that specialty tool to do what needs to be done. And God knows where you're at. He's willing to use you and ready to use you when the need is there. And in that instance, it just reminds us that we're all useful tools in the Master's hand. We just need to surrender to him. Every head bowed and every eye closed. Father, thank you again for the simple reminder, Lord, that lets us know that you care, love, know where we're at, and willing to use us if we'll surrender. I do ask, Lord, that you'd please just help us now to recognize the fact that the task that we have in front of us means that we're probably the tool for the job. And you've equipped us, provided, and all we have to do is surrender to you as you use us. I ask now that you'd please just help us to do that very thing. Father, I'm asking that you'd please use our church to reach into the community, reach into the surrounding areas. Help us to accomplish your will. And Father, I just ask that through all of that, just allow us to be in your hand. That's what we want. And I ask, Father, that you'd please use that very tool that we are to accomplish your will today. In Jesus' name. In just a second, we're going to stand with our heads bowed and with our eyes closed. And in that instance, I just ask you to do this. Would you say this simple prayer to the Lord? Lord, help me to surrender to whatever you can use me for, in whatever manner. He knows what you're designed for, and he knows how to use you. Just surrender to his use.